Good morning. So glad you could join us today. We're the Prospect United Cumberland Presbyterian Church of Cleveland, Tennessee, and we're so glad that you're with us. Our study this morning is going to be entitled, Yes, Virginia, There Is a Satan. A long time ago, September 1897, a little girl named Virginia Hanlon wrote the New York Sun. These are her words. Dear editor, I am 8 years old. Some of my little friends say there is no Santa Claus. Papa says if you see it in the sun, it is so. Please tell me the truth. Is there a Santa Claus? Francis Church's editorial response to this little girl's question became history's most repeated newspaper editorial. The title was, Yes, Virginia, There Is a Santa Claus. George Barnard tells us, the famous for his cultural surveys, discovered that in 2009 that 75% of self-professing Christians do not believe in a real devil or Satan. Well, my papa told me that if you hear it from the Son of God, it is true. Or if you read it in the Bible, it is true. So, preacher, please tell me the truth. Is there a real Satan? Well, let's examine the evidence and see what we learn. First of all, I want to invite you to our first part of our text this morning is Isaiah the 14th chapter, and we'll begin reading with the 12th verse. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations, for you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the furthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. And those who see you will gaze at you and consider you, saying, Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, who did not open the house of his prisoners? This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You know, when we turn on the news today, what are we going to see? Well, it depends on who's answering the question or what channel you turn to. If you turn to one channel, you might hear something like, we're seeing peaceful protesters being threatened by Gestapo federal agents. Or if you turn to another channel, you might hear, we're seeing a federal building attacked by anarchists who have every intent on occupying it or destroying it. I'm seeing a lot of chaos and confusion. Well, who or what is behind all of these terrible things that are happening in our country today? Is it human anger about systemic racism in America? There are multiple numbers of people of color that deny this and call it propaganda. They claim that this term is merely a ruse to promote a social, political agenda. We know it certainly has gained one political extremist group close to $1 billion. That's quite a war chest. Or maybe it's about police brutality. You know, others point out the unfairness of measuring all cops by a few bad apples and estimate that probably 99.9% of all police in America are good servants and protectors of all citizens, and call the effort to defund the police insane. Reform the police? Yes, but abolish the police? This is lunacy and would result in sheer chaos. Or maybe there's a third possibility, that this is an orchestrated revolution to abolish America as we know it, just using these first two complaints to hide their real motivations. So please, let's not throw political stones at each other. Both major political parties are imperfect and each take turns in making the wrong decisions. So the problems we face today are not caused by a political party. They are caused by extremist factions that, in their own words, and I heard this the other day from one of their spokesmen, we must abolish the United States as we know it and rebuild a new country. Both Democrats and Republicans should be together to fight this Marxist revolution. And such words should make your blood boil. Together we can mitigate, neutralize, and defeat this foe, but apart we will only exacerbate the problem and divide our country even more than it is now. This week I watched brave police officers standing proudly in Chicago defending a statue of Christopher Columbus. Over 50 officers were wounded. And their efforts, some would say, were dishonored by a cowardly mayor removing the statues later on that evening, surrendering to the mob. But then there's another perspective. Others say there's another way to look at it. Maybe she decided to remove the cause of her officers being wounded to protect them from further violent actions. So one could see two different perspectives here. How do you explain the Seattle mayor or city council taking away the protection from their police force? I listened to a sad police chief tell how they have lost the authority to use protective crowd control weapons. They are no longer authorized to use tear gas, rubber bullets, or tasers. They can now only build large walls around their precinct and just hunker down and hope they can stay safe. So our problem now is that we have mobs trying to use violence and culture or ethnic intimidation as an excuse for attacking the structure of American government, society, and even our history. Our problem has gone far beyond partisan politics, and we need to stop blaming the other guy across the aisle. We instead need to do several bipartisan things. One, we need to agree to get America back to work safely. Two, we need to get America back to school safely. Three, we need to get America back to normal safely. And by normal, I mean church and worship, leisure and travel, sports, shopping, entertainment, eating out, just visiting with neighbors. Back to handshakes and hugs, and hopefully that will be restored in the not too distant future. Beyond the COVID, we must restore law and order to America and respect and support for those who go in harm's way to protect us, and stop this anti-American push to destroy the nation we love. America's enemies have always been extremists, whether it was the invaders or the terrorists across the pond, or internal revolts and seditions. The extremist position has always threatened the smooth flow of government, business, and society. Extremists are on both sides, though, of the room, whether they are the extreme left or the extreme right. Both are dangerous. And there's a ditch on both sides of the road, and both will make America wind up in that ditch. In the Navy, we learned to course correct. So you didn't just steer the ship to the starboard side or the port side. If you steered only to the port side, you'd go around in circles. If you steered only to the starboard side, you'd go around in circles. We need more course correction, but sometimes our Congress seems unwilling to do that. You know, all of these matters of calling America back to work, back to school, back to normal, back to law and order, are agendas that you would think that every true red, white, and blue American would support without question. So here's a big question for you. Why don't we try to work on these problems together? Why are there Americans who enjoy the freedom and opportunity of living in the greatest nation on earth? Why do they want to destroy that nation? Okay, those are my questions. Now let's see if the Bible gives us better understanding of why one would risk cultural suicide just to prove a point or promote a political agenda. And does the Bible tell us what on earth could make people want to steal, kill, and destroy their fellow man? And at the risk of sounding like the church lady on Saturday Night Live, could it be Satan? Well, let's just take a moment to possibly consider that as an answer. What does the Bible tell us about Satan? His persona, his nature, his character, his ethic or lack thereof? What does the Bible tell us? We're going to take a little bit of time today to look at that. We don't have time to look at the other points that I've chosen for our Bible study this next few weeks, so we'll try to take those up over the next couple of weeks. How does the Bible say Satan can affect us next week? And what does the Bible tell us we can do to have victory over him the week after that? Now, as we begin, just a few disclaimers. I don't like talking about the enemy, the evil one, because it has two directions that it can go in. One, it can actually give Satan honor, and that is absolutely not our intent or purpose, nor should it ever be, to give any honor to Satan. But you see, to study someone or something can actually involve time, talents, and treasures. And this would mean that we are establishing some level of worth for the object of our study to justify our time and our effort. And that worth could mistakenly be interpreted as a perverted form of appreciation. I remember in college when The Exorcist novel came out, and then later, a year or two later when the movie came out, that people became fascinated with the devil, and they wanted to know more about demonic possession. Our studies should be understood as simply knowing the enemy so that we might learn how to better confront his strategies, the strategies and tactics and resources that he has and his mission, and how we can combat those tactics and resources to defeat him. Now, there are certain things that we must make clear. Satan is not the anti-God. He is not God. He is a created being. He was made for God's glory, but he rebelled against God, and he and 1/3 of the angels of heaven were cast out of heaven. He does not have any divine properties of God. He is not omniscient. He can't read your mind. He only knows what you tell him or what you tell others that he's listening on that conversation. He's not omnipotent. He has limited power. He is powerful, but he is not all powerful like the Almighty. And he cannot be omnipresent, so he relies on his demonic servants. Now, the second thing that we don't want to do is create a situation of fear. Why? Because fearing something or someone is respecting them, which is also a form of honoring them. Satan really wants two things. One, he wants us to fall for his deceptive tactics, or basically leave him to his destructive agendas by doubting his existence or laughing at him as harmless. Or he wants us to run away from him terrified and be afraid of waging spiritual war against him. But either way, he wins by default. Now let's get to know this enemy a little bit better. In order that we might consolidate some of this teaching, I have chosen to use one of a preacher's studies. There's 26 things he says about Satan. And hold on to your hats. We're going to go through them very quickly. If you happen to have a pen, you can write down the scriptures. First of all, he says that the devil, of course, is called Satan. He's called Satan 52 times in the Bible. The second thing is he's called the day star, the bearer of light. The Latin word for that is Lucifer. This is found in Isaiah 14:12 that we read. He is called the son of the morning, Isaiah 14:12. Jesus is also called the light, but he said, I am the true light of the world. And he is also the bright and morning star. Jesus is the bright and morning star. Lucifer is called the anointed cherub in Ezekiel 28:14. He is called the devil. That only appears in the New Testament. But that word devil means slanderer. He slanders God and humanity. Matthew 4:1. He's the tempter. Matthew 4:3. He came to Jesus in the wilderness tempting. He is the ruler of demons. Matthew 9:34. He is called Beelzebul, the Lord of flies, or the Lord of dung. How would you like to have that nomenclature? Matthew 12:24. He is the evil one. Matthew 13:19. The one that Jesus gives the parable about and said the bird snatches away the seed that would have been sown in the soil. The devil comes and snatches away the gospel when people hear it, if they did not allow it to go into their hearts. And then he's the enemy, Matthew 13:39. He's the one that sows tares among the true wheat. He is a liar, John 8:44. And then in John 8:44, he says he is the father of lies. He is a murderer, John 8:44. He is a ruler of this world, John 14:30. He is the God, that's a little g, God of this age, like an idol, 2 Corinthians 4:4. He is one who presents himself as an angel of light, 2 Corinthians 11:14. He is called Belial, that means vileness, 2 Corinthians 6:15. He is the ruler of the kingdom of the air. The King James Version says he is the prince of the power of the air. Wow, isn't that amazing? We'll have to have a whole message on that sometimes. It's amazing how you and I can say something to each other and we don't understand each other, even though we use the same language. It is amazing how Satan can kind of confuse things in communications, isn't it? And then he can use the air, I suppose, for accomplishing his work. And then he is an adversary. 1 Peter 5:8 says that we have an adversary who is like a roaring lion. So he's a roaring lion that seeks whom he may devour. He is called, the 21st title, an angel of the abyss in Revelations 9:11. In a 22nd title, he is called Abaddon or Apollyon in the scriptures in Revelation 9:11. That word Abaddon is the Hebrew word, and Apollyon is the Greek word for destroyer. He is the dragon in Revelations 12:19. He is the old serpent in Revelations 12:9, and referring to Genesis 3. He's the deliverer of the whole world in Revelation. He's the deceiver, He's the deceiver of the whole world. Revelations 12:9. And he is the accuser of God's people. Revelations 12:10. I told you, hold on to your hats. We were going to be moving pretty quickly. A preacher friend of mine once told me how he deals with Satan's accusations against him. He said, when Satan shows me my past, I show him his future. Now let's get to know this enemy just a little bit better. He is a tempter. Now the serpent was more cunning than the beast of the field, Genesis 3:1 says. And this word cunning or crafty or subtle, sly. He's a tempter. And not only does he tempt us, as we said just then, he is an accuser of the brethren. He tries to get you to fail, and then when you follow his advice, he says, I thought you were a Christian. He's a rebel and a revolutionary. In Isaiah 14:12 through 15, the scriptures that we read as our text this morning. I will ascend into heaven. I will set my throne on high above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of the congregation in the far reaches of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High God. Satan has an eye problem, doesn't he? And you are brought down to Sheol, God says, to the depths, the far reaches of the pit. And that was the sentence of Satan. Now, what exactly happened that caused Satan to be so judged? Luke 10:18, Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. And Revelations 12:7 through 10 gives us a better picture. Apparently, Satan, in all of his aspiring to be like God, led over a third of the force of heaven's angels. That would be, according to the count in Revelations 5:11, where there were 10,000 times 10,000 angels standing there praising God. That's 100 million angels. That means that Satan led around 30 million angels to revolt against heaven. So he's rebellious. He's dangerous. Peter said in 1 5:8, he's like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. He's a sinner. Sin is of the devil. The devil sinned from the beginning, 1 John 3:8 says. And the Son of God came to destroy the works of the devil. He's a murderer, Jesus said in John 8:44. He's a thief. And the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus said, but I have come that you might have life and you might have it more abundantly. And then he said, he's a liar. He's a liar. Your father is a liar, he told the Jews. He said, he can't stand the truth. He doesn't relate to the truth because there's no truth whatsoever in the devil. There's no truth within him. And when he speaks in lies, he can only do that because he is full of lies, Jesus said. He is so full of lies that he can be referred to as the father of lies. He's a pretender. Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. And with all of this, how does he become so effectively deceptive? Because he was made to be beautiful. He has attractive features to him, I suppose, that attracts the world to him. In Ezekiel 28:12 through 19, some of these features are He is referred to as the signet or seal of perfection. He was full of wisdom when he was created. He was perfect in beauty. And he was in Eden, the garden of God. And the Bible says in Ezekiel 28:12 through 19, that every precious stone covered him. Rubies, topaz, diamonds, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald with crafted gold. It said, you were, referring to Satan, you were the anointed garden cherub. And that word garden cherub means the covering cherub. You are the one with outstretched wings or extended wings. It means that you stand out even among all the angels because you have such splendor. And you walked in the midst of the stones of fire. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created. In other words, there again, Satan is a created being. He is not God. Until unrighteousness was found in you. That's iniquity. And you began to traffic in violence. Does anyone doubt that Satan traffics in violence? You began to traffic in violence, and you became filled with violence, and you sinned. I love the way that's understated. It says, and you sinned. What did he do? Well, it was just a little thing. He led 30 million angels in rebellion against the throne of heaven. Yeah, I would say he sinned. And then, so I cast you from the mountain of God, God says. I destroyed you, O guardian cherub, from the midst of the stones of the fire, as a profane thing. A tenth thing about Satan, he's a narcissist. In verse 17 it said, your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor, and I cast you to the ground. I laid you before kings that they might gaze on you. In verse 18, you defiled your sanctuaries by multitudes of your iniquities. Once again, this is God speaking to the devil. By the iniquity of your trade. Therefore I brought fire from your midst, and it devoured you. And get this, I turned you into ashes upon the earth in the sight of all who see you. Wow. That's the exact opposite of what God does for us. That's a reverse of the blessing of Isaiah, where God gives us beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that we might be trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. Here, he gives Satan, who had such a beautiful appearance, he gives him ashes for beauty. Instead of beauty for ashes, he gives Satan ashes for beauty. In turn, making him who was so proud of his beauty dirty and ugly. And God lets everyone see his ugliness so that they might be shocked at the consequences of his sin. Verse 19 says, all who know you among the peoples, among the nations and tribes, were amazed, because you have become a horror, and you shall be no more forever. I'm almost out of breath. This beautiful creature that God created for his glory has become hideous. This gentle creature of beauty and music has become violent and destructive. This creature that was made to serve and minister to a holy, merciful, and loving God has become vicious, vengeful, vile, and evil. Whereas before his fall, Lucifer was vain about his beauty and splendor. He now delights in destruction and death and horror and creating ugliness where once there was beauty. He who once was skilled in beautiful music and the mathematics of melody and harmony now traffics in chaos, dissonance, and disorder. He who once called the angels to worship God now calls his demons and the deceived of the human race to curse this holy God and despise him, and all that is beautiful and good in creation. Next Sunday, we will look at how this evil angel can influence believers. This week, as you watch the chaos and destruction on TV, see if you don't see this violence as ultimately the handiwork of Satan. Until next week, I leave you with this thought. St. John wrote in 1 John 4:4, "Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world." Have you put your trust in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Master? Have you received him as your Savior? Do you trust in the fact that when he died on the cross, he paid the penalty for your sins, and that he's knocking at your heart's door and he wants to come and live inside your heart? If you've made that decision, then I promise you, my friend, then God has given you his gift of forgiveness, and his gift of the Holy Spirit is now living in your heart, in your life. So truly, greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. We need to know that God is moving powerfully in our lives today to accomplish his purposes for his glory and to overcome the evil of this world. Because, yes, Virginia, there is a Satan.